Chambers of Commerce across the UK are working with their members and the wider business community to keep business moving during the COVID-19 crisis. My name is Paul Britton. I'm Chief Executive for Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce, and in these 1-to-1 in 20 interviews, I'm speaking to business leaders from across the region. Key sectors such as automotive and life sciences, pharmaceuticals and professional services. In this session, I'm speaking with John Ellis. John is Managing Partner for PwC's Thames Valley practice. It's home to 600 employees and their UK Centre of Excellence for Technology. So hello John, very good to see you again. Last time I think we got together was at your offices when you were opening your Frontier Tech Hub. That was in November. That was a great day. It seems a little while ago now, though, it has to be said. How are your team faring after the lockdown? How are you managing locally with your Reading office? Because I think you've got 400 staff in and around that Reading office.
Yeah, it's actually about 600, Paul.
Okay.
No, I think broadly we're coping pretty well. I suppose a little story for you was that I remember driving home. I was driving past Slough, actually, not far from your offices, and hearing the announcements internally on the day that we were all starting to work from home. It's about 2 months ago now, and it was all started dawning on me. And the thing that I think we were the most worried about was suddenly we were going to have 22,000 of our employees suddenly accessing our systems from outside rather than from inside. Fortunately, we've invested quite a lot over the last 2 or 3 years on technology, and that next morning when everyone logged on, we were okay. So we've used a huge amount of technology, and that has enabled us to stay in touch with our people. And as time has gone on, we've sort of worked different ways of engaging with people. It's not the same as being in an office, and you can't wander around and just check in on someone. So you have to think about it a bit more proactively, and think of different ways of doing it. I was on a quiz 2 or 3 weeks ago where we were each in different teams on different hangouts answering the quiz master. It seemed to work really well. So I think, and we're lucky, we've got a pretty young workforce, and they're coming up with new ideas constantly of how we stay in touch. So yeah, we're okay.
I am getting that through the membership, that actually that those that are able to work from home, some are finding it challenging, understandably, but for the majority we seem to have almost like reset in this now, and the main challenge is obviously going to be through this restart is getting back into the workplace, and that seems to be where we are now. We're moving from this crisis management mode into future planning. And I mean, what adjustments are you seeing? What are you seeing with your clients about how they're starting to plan now for this restart, as the government's calling it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Paul, and you're spot on that crisis management piece. So I suppose how do we see it? We see it from the engagement that we're having with our clients, and I don't think everyone is out of crisis management yet. I think there are still some sectors that are really badly impacted by the crisis and are still dealing with it, and they will be for a little bit more time. Other companies, though, are actually starting to think about, well, what does the future look like? And that involves all sorts of different things. It's your workforce. So what sort of workforce do you need? Given that everyone has been working from home, actually, do you need the same property footprint as you had before? What might your supply chain look like? So there's many different questions that companies are thinking about, and actually there are not too many answers at the moment either. But I think a lot of the effort now is to actually think about, well, if we look 12 months, 18 months, 2 years out, what do we think a particular industry might look like, and what steps can you start to put in place now to get yourself to be sort of fit for purpose for what the future looks like. But the ranges within that within those scenarios are huge. And I think that's the thing that companies that we're seeing are battling with the most, is sort of what might that return look like economically and practically for them as well.
No, I'm with you. We're starting to see some sectors being in a position where they can make earlier decisions than others and start to take actions. But I read in one of your colleagues' reports around the fact that COVID has brought, as he put it, unprecedented disruption, but it's also prompted companies to take action perhaps that they've been putting off. And you reflected on a few areas in which seems to be seeing some common approaches around new digital services, business models, and you touched on it there for flexible working, and I hadn't put it that way, but obviously around property and around the actual workspace itself.
Yeah, and I suppose there are a couple of things that we were talking to clients about before the crisis, right, that are actually the point. They've just brought it all to a head, and workforce of the future was absolutely one of those, and it's all sorts of things. It can be what skill sets you need, and frankly, with an increased reliance on sort of technology and digital, have you got the right people in your organisation, and also where are they? Do they need to be in a central head office in London, or could they be in a central head office in Reading? Or so there are lots of moving parts, but I think that the traditional workforce model that companies have had is going to change.
Let's just pick up on that. So let's imagine a scenario. So coming from an inward investment background, where the flight of lots of overseas companies has been to London and the surrounding area first. Well, if there's going to be a reset amongst the workforce around perhaps work-life balance and how long they want to spend commuting, could you see let me put it another way. What would you see the implications for that being on the leafy suburbs of the Thames Valley?
I think broadly, I'd say it's got to be positive, and we've not yet seen what the new transport strategy is going to look like following in terms of that return. But I know we've got a lot of people in our organisation who really don't want at this point to be getting on a tube or getting on a packed train, and therefore I do think that there will be changes in people's attitudes to where they work and how they get to work. Now that might mean that they want to work from home, and actually you can continue to work from home, and I think many organisations have proven that that's perfectly practicable. It might, though, mean that people want to work in locations that they feel risks are lower. And as you say, the leafy suburbs outside of London, in the Thames Valley, for example, might be places where people want to live and work, possibly. But whether they work in those locations from home or whether they work from locations in offices, that's, I think, unknown at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. There are some uncertainties around it, and one of the sectors that we were talking about, and I noticed again in one of the reports that your colleagues have been producing, was around the aviation sector. Yeah. And we've got one of the key assets of the UK in Heathrow, which has been you could argue that the main magnet for investment and the main catalyst for growth here in the Thames Valley area. So any reflections? You mentioned transport there on the role of Heathrow in the future. Can we see that bouncing back in the same way and continuing to be the same magnet for investment that we've had before for this part of the world?
Yeah, I mean fundamentally Heathrow is a fantastic asset, And if you're going to have an airport, then you would want one that looks like Heathrow, in terms of its scale and size and ability to cope with volume. So I think it will always be important. I don't know, and I think it's I'm not sure anyone does what the impact of this crisis will have on international travel. My guess is that it's not going to go up, and particularly the sort of the forced usage of technology like we're doing at the moment will mean that people need to travel less. People might still want to travel less, and I think there is still a lot to be said for face-to-face contact and really getting to know people. So we might get a little bit carried away at the moment on there'll be no business travel because we can do everything remotely and on Zoom or Google Hangout or whatever. But fundamentally, I think people still will want to move around the world. So I think Heathrow still has a really important role to play.
Yeah, 100%. There's going to be debates going on soon as the fog starts to clear around future expansion of Heathrow, and that will be borne out in time. But the key message I'm getting generally around the restart and the recovery is that we're only going to be able to do that as a business community at the same pace of when we're able to get goods and people safely around. And so the support that we're looking to give to our members that are regional bus operators or Heathrow as an example, or any of the airlines is that we need these carriers, we need these organisations to recover at a pace that's going to support the rest of the business community. Just moving away from the transport side for a moment, John. I was really keen to get your thoughts on experience with business leaders across the region, because this is an almighty test. It's an almighty test for businesses generally, but it's also a test of what business leaders are seeking to do, but also what what adjustments they're having to make. I mean, have you got examples of sectors or businesses or business leaders that you can share that perhaps members of ours can take away?
Yeah, I mean, I probably won't go straight into sector because I think it sort of narrows it down a little bit. But I think, the thing for me on what I am talking to business leaders about at the moment is just the need to really make decisions quickly, but to make decisions that are very, very effective. Now, I suspect that some of the decisions that all of us have made over the last couple of months will not necessarily have been the right decisions, but that sharp, laser-like focus as to what needs to be done, I think is really sort of differentiating the very good business leaders from the good business leaders. So I think that sort of ability to decision make is important. And I mean, an example would be, we saw some really good examples of businesses responding quickly at the outset around what they needed from a cash perspective. And part of that was driven by having great information, and they were able to, they knew what the levers were in their business. They knew what their forecast cash flows were. And then as a consequence, they could map it out. We were helping some companies that didn't have cash flow forecasts, and they were having to sort of create from nothing information. So I think that's sort of the challenges with information, I think, has been brought to light as to how much information people have and how quickly they can respond to it. And I think also one of the things that has really struck me in many conversations that we've had is the absolute emphasis that business leaders are putting on their people and the importance of people in all this. So I work with a couple of retailers, and they absolutely are reliant on their people to be helping them, frankly, support the rest of the nation in providing produce and goods. So I think that leadership point of how do you keep your people with you, and how do you provide the right support to your people is absolutely fundamental at this stage. And I think we're seeing that, Paul, in communities as well. I think that the whole COVID crisis has brought communities more together.
Yeah, and we've got some great examples across the Thames Valley that I've been first to stand in line and cheer about, because it also, I hope, will bear fruit in the future around this focus perhaps of businesses looking at their sense of purpose. And for some sectors, you mentioned, retail or perhaps frontline responses, that may be less challenging to correlate how we are supporting young people or the vulnerable with organisations that perhaps for whatever reason haven't needed to look at what social impact they have.
Yeah.
And so I can see in terms of our work ahead, in terms of planning of our Chamber's Business Manifesto, that when we do eventually get together, either online or hopefully face to face, is there will need to be a conversation about the role of business and its contribution to society, and that always comes across as a little glib, but actually I think we're really starting to see the role of businesses, and as public purse strings start to tighten again, because they will have to, and unfortunately we're going to need to see more contribution from everybody to help with the recovery financially, is perhaps it's those businesses that do get their sense of purpose absolutely right that will bear the most fruit in the future. I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that as well.
Paul, it's interesting. We've had a purpose at PwC probably for the last 4 or 5 years now, which is solve important problems and build trust in society. And actually that purpose at the moment is absolutely bang on, because actually we want society to trust business, because business has such an important role to play in society. So one of the things that I've been really proud about in the Reading office is that we're doing some work with the Royal Berkshire Hospital. There's a piece of work going on there, but the team had noticed that the staff at the Royal Berkshire Hospital were working incredibly hard, going to the supermarkets, and there'd been nothing left on the shelves. So we've got all these people who are doing fantastic things for our community and then can't get produce. So with, amongst others, the team that we've got there helped set up this little shop on site, so the staff at the hospital could go and get their sort of groceries and take them away. It's just a brilliant sort of example of, it wasn't just us, it's other organisations as well. So thinking about how can they support and how can they help, because we're not the doctors, but we can we can help in the background.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that across for businesses large as well. I mean, as you say, 600 employees, and hats off to PwC for and some of this is driven by employers, and some is driven by the employees just think this is the right thing to do. Yeah. But it seems to be across the community, from businesses large and small as well. Just a final comment or a final question around the restart, as government is calling it. Any advice or points you can share around what steps business leaders can take in giving perhaps confidence and reassurance to their staff, or as we begin to try to get, as I described, in the Thames Valley engine fired up again? Yes. Any reflections on that, John?
So I mean, if I sort of think about the guidance we're giving to our people as well as an example, so I think fundamentally what we want to make sure is that our staff and our people are safe. That has got to be the number one priority. So we will absolutely follow any guidance that is issued by government, and that might be that we have to absolutely respect social distancing. Now that brings challenges in itself. So how do you get a whole load of people onto the 23rd floor of an office block in a lift where you've got like 2 meters from one corner to another corner? So that could take some time. So I think it will be, for us, it will be gradual. There won't be a sudden turn on the light of our office in Reading and all 600 people suddenly appear. That's not going to happen. So I think following the government advice, communicating with employees at all times as to what the plans are, I think that's really important. But being positive about it as well, because I think many organisations have actually thrived in this environment. And there might be changes that you want to make that you think actually we can do that now, because as you said earlier on, that it's sort of, there's a real huge reality check at this point, where everything's been turned upside down. So use it as an opportunity, and that comes back a little bit to revisiting business models and where businesses will go. But absolutely, our advice is to be having our staff priority as our number one priority.
Perfect. Well, I'm looking forward to. I mean, I mentioned the Business Manifesto. I think it's going to be quite a remarkable process we'll be going through in evaluating what the strategic priorities are for the business community and the wider area. And I'm looking forward to getting PwC's insights into that, and yours and colleagues as well. It is going to be no doubt a particularly challenging period for the region, but for all the reasons we've talked about, like you, I feel that we're resilient, and we'll work together through this. So, John, thank you very much for your time. Some great insights there. Stay safe.
It's a pleasure, Paul. And actually, I've just heard an aeroplane flying over, which living in England.
Very good. That'll keep our international trade team busy. Fantastic. All the best, John. Stay safe.
Cheers.